So welcome to the first episode of Epigram. So this is gonna be conversations that we're gonna have having with a few great designers. And please subscribe if you like what we're doing on the description below. And today we have Mike Bello, great colleague of mine. We went work together. We know each other for now how many years? Maybe 8 years,
Eight
something like
years,
that.
yeah.
So yeah, how's it going, man?
Good, thank
Welcome.
you. Thank you so
Cheers.
much. Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
So, Mike, one of the reasons that I always we always start having conversations while we are in a bar or something, talking
Hmm.
about life, etc. I'm always there's some things about defining our careers in the design field,
Yeah.
and a landscape architect, man. Like I learned so much about your work while we
Hmm.
were at Gensler a while ago. And I was so fascinated how you engage with the people
Hmm.
and how do you also took your career and to the next level. I don't know.
Hmm.
So tell me a little bit of what's going on, man. So
Sure. Thanks again. This is great. This is really cool. I'm really happy to say landscape architecture has really grown so much since when I started. I mean, I started in 2000. Uh, and since then, it's been, well, everybody's very familiar with the different projects that are all over the U.S. Landscape architects have really grown in their presence from the High Line to Navy Pier in Chicago. A lot of great work out there. And so I've been very happy and pleased to be a part of some of the exciting projects out there. And it's been a very, very adventurous working career.
so for the audience, maybe I'm just thinking about like maybe my mother
Yeah.
hearing this and one of the questions that I'm always saying, like one of my friends the other day told me, "Hey Hector, do you have a landscape architect that I can hire to do my landscape in my house?" And the first thing is to think about you. I'm saying like, you really want to hire a landscape architect, or you want to hire a gardener or something like
Yeah.
that? There's so much more about your career and your expertise that I remember seeing in different elements of projects, and I really wanted whoever or younger generations to really tell them a little bit about what is a landscape architect, what they
Sure.
do, what is.
Sure. Actually, it's interesting you start with residential. Landscape architecture is actually one of its births comes from gardens, large gardens for, you would say, European gardens, large, and Italy and England, and everything from the folly to these large parks. It started to expand. But really, as we started to delve into the urban fabric and realizing cities were becoming too much of cities and less of a balance between the environment and cities, they city planners started to look at how we could create lungs in the cities, return the environment back into the cities. And so all these parks and gardens that landscape architects were designing externally started to be introduced into the cities. So the green started coming back in, and that's one of the reasons for Central Park. So there's a lot of really cool aspects that landscape architecture sort of stemmed through to return or be part of sort of the urban growth, urban fabric. And we're all excited to be a part of any of that, from streetscapes to pocket parks to plazas. They're all roofed gardens, lots of roof gardens and decks are really neat. But to give you an idea of my background, through landscape architecture, I've ended up going from designing just recreational parks to all of a sudden doing indoor malls in Kuwait City.
Oh wow.
And that was pretty wild to go from one to the other. And then pocket parks in Midtown Manhattan, roof gardens. I recently was, as we were talking earlier, actually at the bar. We were talking earlier. I was proposing to consider rethinking how we look at the streetscape as a linear park. This is the current thinking right now. The sort of that thought process for designers is taking back the streetscape for the pedestrians, and the idea of how can the pedestrian realm become more of a park-like setting. And we're closing streets weekends and such and such. The other idea is to look at roof decks, making them more public of some of these buildings. And I think there's an opportunity for landscape architecture to continue to integrate itself, as mentioned, gardens, external, into all different aspects that really help balance life and experience, which I think you and I talk a lot about. enhancing experience.
That's great. I think we're gonna go back to some of that what you just said. That's quite interesting. But I also want to like go back, really back, and say, how the heck do you finish deciding like I want to be a landscape architect? For example, myself deciding I want to study architecture. It was like given through my family telling me, you're really good at drawing and you're doing okay in math. You should consider architecture. It will take that creativity that you have in drawing and engage it.
Yeah.
And I think I have work. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you. Like how did your career started? Like what is making you like this is it?
Sure. Two things I could share that really drew me to landscape architecture. The first one was comic books, and the second one was Mickey Mouse.
Oh, really?
That's exactly how I became a landscape architect. And so basically, as a kid, I was interested in comic books. I was just going through, looking at all these superheroes. Eventually, I was still interested in the superheroes, but I was really looking at the backgrounds and the sort of drawings that they had in the backgrounds. And it was really fascinating to me how the buildings were laid out and the streetscapes and this sort of three-dimensional aspect, the foreground, middle ground, background. The superhero was always in your face, the foreground, sometimes in the middle ground, but mostly in the foreground. And I was fascinated with the background. So I started sketching it. And eventually I ended up in school for, design. And we had a choice to pick between three disciplines: interior architecture, landscape architecture. As I was going through the process of considering, I got hired for an internship at Disney for the summer. I took a chance. I was young. I was like,
so the internship at Walt Disney in your Facebook is actually real. I thought that was a joke.
I wasn't just making it up. Yeah,
because it looks like it's a joke.
This guy's messing around.
It's messing around, so it actually is real. Wow, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. I'm glad you appreciated that. You noticed that. People are like, cool, the guy worked for Mickey Mouse. He was my boss. I told my nephews that. Mickey Mouse was my boss. They're like, what? So that was pretty neat. I ended up going there for my internship. I must have been like 19. And it was, they call it the advanced internship in landscape architecture and horticulture. And it was mostly some business-based, but it was really retrofitting and redesigning all of the pavilions in Epcot. So we learned all of the landscapes for each of the countries. There's 13 countries.
Okay.
From Japan to Canada, we learned all the different landscapes and how they integrate themselves to the architecture. You sketch it like at 5 a.m. You're sketching ideas or coming up with ideas, and then they send you out there and you actually try to implement it with a team of folks, and that was really pretty neat stuff. I came back. I'm gonna be a landscape architect.
And how you started like coming from the south to the north? Because I know that you work in New York for a few years, right? So how that really happened? I don't know, like. Yeah. From that point, and then you finish all the way in New York. Like, I don't know if you want to tell quickly.
Sure.
I'm intrigued to know your story.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I ended up going to Miami for work. They recruited me from, from University of Florida, and I ended up moving down to Miami. And it was a job in Miami Beach. I was 22 years old, 23. So it was exciting to be working on the beach, like maybe a block and a half from the beach. And I spent 3 years there. And then they went ahead and they pulled me from there. I moved up to project manager pretty quickly, working on high-end residentials. We were doing dog runs on roof decks and negative edge pools and porte cocheres with shark tanks as the center of the porte cochere, and it was the Miami times. And then they plucked me out of there to help open the DC office, and I moved into DC. That's how I moved to DC.
Okay, so you started. This was Gensler back then?
Kimley Horn and Associates. Yeah.
Okay.
It was an engineering firm that bought an urban design company, a landscape architecture urban design acquired them, and then they expanded that branch of their business.
Well, it's incredible, from Mickey Mouse to landscape architecture. So you were like on your way to the north. You were telling me. So tell me a little bit more how that happened.
Sure. So I ended up in Washington D.C. And the projects that we were lining up here at the time were with the government, of course, is DC, everybody's familiar with. And my first project, or my second to first project, maybe second project, was Pentagon roof deck.
Oh, wow.
And it was pretty neat working on a helicopter pad that served also as the roof of a garage. And next thing I know, I've got some clearance to hang out at the Pentagon. It was a pretty neat project. Yeah.
So sorry, I just got confused. So that was the transition from Miami coming
to
back.
DC.
Yeah.
So DC was a lot of government work we were building from, and then we were starting to do, you know, sort of like base type landscape architecture projects and streetscapes and stuff like that. And from there, we just kept growing, and I would work in Miami every once in a while, fly back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how everything started with Gensler. I don't know.
Oh, so I got my license at some point, and I said, hey, I'm going to go. Okay, so I was recruiting at the University of Maryland. And and the head of the Federation of Landscape Architects, International Federation of Landscape Architects, was the keynote speaker at this recruiting event. And she said, all of you civil engineers, landscape architects, planners, you know, why retain all of your talent in this country when the rest of the world could use you? Think about an opportunity to expand on your skill sets and your talents. So I was looking up some master's programs and what perks you can get to go to these masters. I ended up in graduate school in New York for an international program in architecture and urban design.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, awesome. So yeah, I just want to know, like, I'm just intrigued, like all that, you know, I one of the reasons we become really good friends too is because we have a very similar background, you know, like we are from a Latino family. Yeah. You're a neighbor from Cuba, Puerto Rico. And I think the friendship started more from that route of the salsa, right?
It did,
going out and dancing salsa in the city.
Yes.
And I'm learning so much about you that I never asked you these questions before, you know?
We were too busy dancing, hanging out and celebrating.
That's great. So, so you just going with the North. So you then like started after school. You went and worked with Gensler. That's what happened.
Yeah, I ended up in New York City, working with Gensler out of the Rockefeller office, and that was slowly bringing me to meet you. And one of the exciting adventures in New York was I was there maybe 2 or 3 months maximum, and next thing I know, I'm in South Korea.
Oh wow!
Yeah, traveling to Korea for work, and then from there to London, and then eventually those projects led me to Washington D.C.
That's cool. So just going with that, you know, change of culture, of course, super huge thing, you know, from Cuba, Miami, you know, like New York, now Korea. Like there was a moment that you switched thinking like what is the purpose of my career? It's like the gear of what you're looking for as your north changed slightly somehow. You think like what I'm doing, this is what I want, or like there's something, I don't know, like maybe my question doesn't make sense.
No, I like the question. No, the question is good. I like it. It actually does make sense. Yeah, everybody, I think, like you, we can definitely check out how you did it. But my mindset at the time was, well, you know, I want to go past just streetscapes and projects that are sort of on the ground and external. And I want to be part of architecture and be more involved with architecture. So through urban design, I was really becoming more involved with that. And at Gensler, we started getting into that. And it was really a neat experience. I think they pulled me fish out of water when they put me in Seoul and in Incheon to do work, which was really, it broadened my horizons. If what that keynote speaker said that one day was anything that could resonate with me, it definitely resonated then, because they in Korea explained to us scale is different. The way you think about, you perceive space is going to be different in different parts of the world. And so I learned a lot from that. That's which great. I know you bring with you because I've seen the work you do and it's everywhere. So
that's awesome. So one of the things that I remember, I keep jumping back and forth. I just want to make this as casual as possible. But I remember like hanging out one day and you told me, "Hey, I'm starting to do hydroponics on roofs."
Yeah.
What happened with that? Are you still doing that? Or?
Yeah, actually, it turned into, well, we sold that business.
Can we explain a little bit what is hydroponics so people that maybe don't know what we're talking about?
Yeah, initially we started with hydroponics is basically growing plants without soil, basically using water with nutrients. And you have your fundamentals is nitrogen, potassium, and you just balance those out with the other minerals that you need to put into the plant system. And that goes through the water, and the roots absorb that, and that's how you grow these plants. And you can use a roof deck to do that, or you can use a basement, which is what we found. We found a cheaper rent with a basement in Alexandria behind City Hall.
And you had lamps and everything?
Yeah, like, we built a shelving unit, a whole shelving unit. We built flood tables. We retained a business agreement with Whole Foods in the city of Alexandria.
Before you started, you made the business
we were
agreement.
growing it out of a buddy's house, which started to look like a disaster.
Okay.
It looked like a zoo of plants and some animals that started visiting because of the plants. But we retained, first it was Whole Foods in city of Alexandria for a little portion of a shelf. And the idea was we were going to grow what's called microgreens. Microgreens essentially are the plants' seeds at the time of germination. You pull those plants out of the soil, you cut them. We would actually harvest them by cutting them, and they actually hold more nutrients, 40 times per some research that's out there. You'll find that online, more nutrients than their adult counterparts. So, for example, basil at a certain maturity has depleted some of its nutrients because it's already grown to the mature level that it's expecting, that anticipated, to achieve a certain amount of sunlight, to grow, to proliferate. And we cut it at a certain height, and it keeps a certain amount of nutrients. And then we sell that. We put that in like a package, a pretty label, and we pitch it to Whole Foods, and we sold. We ended up expanding from City of Alexandria. We went from City of Alexandria to DC's George Washington University area. Then we went from there to Bethesda and a few other places, and just grew from there. And we said, all right, we can't scale up anymore. We went ahead and sold it.
You sold it?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So the idea was, first it was a roof deck, which I had learned from a restaurant in New York City in the Village, Bell Book and Candle. And they have a roof deck hydroponics that they grow, and that supplies 85% of their greens for the restaurant.
Okay.
Anyway.
So, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, whatever.
That was, I found that super interesting.
You never visited the joint. We never got you in there.
No, man.
We could still get you. We could still get you there.
Yeah.
We probably didn't want too many people in there because every once in a while the place needed to be organized.
That's cool. So, now just maybe, we talk a little bit of your background and everything. I know that we have been in DC for a few years now. Me, like 9 years.
Yeah.
And I think you have been back and forth and everything. And I want to see like your perspective of this city that is growing right now. And it's growing so rapidly, and there's so many changes.
Yeah.
And there's the urban movement, I think, have changed a lot. You can see the amount of people walking, the traffic, etc.
Absolutely.
And I was intrigued about different things you were saying about rooftops, different ways of using design to change perspectives of places that you always have seen in a certain way.
Yeah.
And maybe you can see it from above or use the roof activity or something. I don't know, where do you see the action of the urban and landscape future of the city of DC? I don't know. This is a maybe like super tough question, but maybe you can send something there.
No,
I don't
like
know.
that. I'll work on
maybe
that.
you need another beer to answer that. But
I'm good. No, it's excellent. Actually, that question really, and we were talking about earlier in the bar, we were, to build on that, really is, if the exciting part of this city, which is different from my experience in other cities that you and I have both lived in or visited, that roof decks or rooftops are in very high points that are almost, if you will, in a different stration, a different connect that doesn't relate to the ground as much. DC, because of its height act, the restriction to keep buildings within a certain height for both openness and also access to views to all of the beautiful anchors that make it the grand city. That leads to an opportunity because you have more if you draw a line in this city and you have a lot of exposure, a lot more area, and you can almost within a short distance redefine what would be one day potentially congested streetscape or urbanscape, and start thinking about the city from roofscapes and think about it as sort of this inhabitable, perceived inhabitable landscape that's on roof decks. That'd be interesting to think about at least. And the landscape would be part of that. It would be.
So I'm just intrigued how you make that public, really.
Mm-hmm.
How you can like just think about like a movie, like I'm just thinking ahead in years, like how do you see this like being connected publicly in private like buildings or organizations? Yeah.
A good example, and what's good about, and mostly as well with art, with everything, is there's always a precedent somewhere out there. If you could just seek it out enough, you'll find something. And a good older sibling for this is San Francisco, actually. San Francisco, and you almost have to hybrid San Francisco with New York. New York has a very emblematic plaque that symbolizes all of the public spaces that relate to and invite the public at the ground level, and they're stainless steel with a very simple symbol of a tree, and it says this is a public park, and that signifies you access to whatever's that's related to.
Tell me a little bit more of those secret gardens in San Francisco.
Sure. So there's that I can count, or at least we're aware of. There's about 20 to 20 something, 21 private roof gardens or rooftops that are roof parks that are semi-public, where they leverage those spaces for the public to have access to. And that's really exciting if you think of it.
It sounds like a speakeasy public space.
Yeah.
Sounds like something like that, right?
Secret. Yeah.
It's like, it has that feeling then. I like
you got to know where they are to enjoy them. Yeah.
And I can see that happening in DC, definitely.
There's an opportunity for it, I think. Yeah. I think that level of amenity, and I think building managers and owners would realize that by having not just tenants, but the public engage with tenants at that level, it would be a very attractive amenity, even more. So I don't know, it'd be nice.
That's awesome. Other stuff that I start seeing is always I ask myself in terms of programming. I see like now in the summer you can see like the Golden Triangle, where people start to make some events to engage the public, and I can see yoga happening in the public spaces, different kind of stuff. I don't know, like thinking from other cities or etc. If there's even more creative ways to really keep using these public spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like I was even thinking, this is just crazy ideas. Like I know that WeWork is a new thing now,
right.
That people, find a more freedom to work, and find a space to develop ideas and create connections and networking. If plazas could have like an impact like that in the cities, like not even thinking if you can rent conference space
mm-hmm.
in a plaza or something. I don't know, like
no, that's cool.
That could have like that kind of impacts, like other communities of work surrounding can start using those public spaces in a more, I don't know, let's say profitable way.
Yeah, I don't know. And you could define it as a different type of production that generates from there. That's actually something I saw. To your point, Silver Spring had it looked like a tractor trailer, completely designed, amplified as what you do in design. As it made it beautiful, and it was an actual outdoor office space that included all types of different amenities for an office environment. Everything from the Wi-Fi, of course, and this movable seating and all of that element. And it was a pretty interesting thing that was being offered. And I think there's something to that coming up. I just don't know, to what level. I think hopefully it'll just evolve.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what would be next for Mike Bello? You know, something that I didn't hear in the beginning that is your kind of like your slang is like, "What's up?"
Yeah, yeah, I know. I say that, right? What's up?
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So what is next for you, and you what are like I don't know. You don't have to say something specific because you're a creative guy, so you have an idea today, maybe tomorrow you have something else. But do you have something else like that idea that you engaged with me before of the Whole Foods, etc.? Do you have something planned ahead, like maybe you can share with people? But what is the future of Mike Bell?
Yeah, I think one of the things I was really excited to learn about from the plant business, the microgreen business was, and by the way, I wanted to mention is potassium, magnesium, and phosphorus was what we were adding to the plant soils and all that.
Okay, okay.
But what we learned from it was that there was a lot more to learn about how we define sustainability, and there's an opportunity to merge the idea of sustainability from this broad-based thinking, which is the atmosphere, the buildings, the agriculture, the forests, the cities, and we're trying to, through a buddy of mine are doing a write-up, if you will, and it's about how do we retain that into ourselves, our health. How do we connect all of these striations, these transects of sustainability? And so we're in the process of writing a book about this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
When is this coming up? Like,
it's a work in progress.
You can share the date here.
It's going to be coming out in 20. Yeah, it's gonna be good stuff, I think. But I'll pass it through you to see what you think. I'll pass it by you.
So, Mike, I think
for sure.
This was our first podcast. Let's see if we can invite you again and keep developing this. We use you as a guinea pig to see if this works out. I hope people can enjoy and also try to subscribe to our channel in the description below. And also I'm going to share Mike Bello's contacts. And let's keep this rolling. Hopefully we're going to have one interview per week. So thank you guys. And
thank you.
What's up?
What's up? Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you. See you around.
See you.
Bye-bye.